Hello, listener. The fact you hear this means you're alive. If you're new here, consider subscribing and comment below. Where you're listening from, you must subscribe because every single subscribe helps me donate $1 to those who sacrifice for our country. Let's begin the story. I bought the house in March. That's when everything started to unravel. The realtor, a woman named Petra with nervous hands, kept emphasizing the Victorian architecture, the original hardwood floors, the way afternoon light spilled through stained glass windows. She never mentioned the basement. I didn't ask. Looking back, I realized she was counting on that. The house sat on the edge of town, where Birch Street curved into forest. My wife Sophia thought it was too isolated. She was right, but I didn't listen. I was 37 and convinced I needed space to write. The mortgage was reasonable. The neighbors were distant. Perfect. I found the chains 3 days after moving in. They hung from iron brackets bolted into the stone foundation. 4 sets. 2 on the north wall, 2 on the south. The metal was old, rust-patterned, but when I touched them that first time, God, I'll never forget it, they were warm. Not room temperature warm. Body warm. Like someone had been holding them moments before I descended those wooden stairs. Sophia was upstairs unpacking kitchen boxes. I stood there in the dim basement light, my fingers wrapped around links that shouldn't have felt like that. The basement smelled like damp earth and something else. Something I couldn't identify then. Something metallic and old. I told myself it was the heating system. Maybe pipes ran behind the walls, warming the metal. That made sense. That was logical. But the furnace wasn't running. It was 68 degrees outside. Spring in northern Germany doesn't require heat. I let go of the chains and wiped my palm on my jeans. My hand came away clean, but I felt residue there. A sensation. A memory of warmth that lingered like a handprint. Sophia came down that evening while I was setting up my desk in the corner opposite the chains. She stopped halfway down the stairs. "Klaus," she said, "what is that smell?" I'd stopped noticing it. The metallic scent had become background, like white noise for my nose. But hearing her say it brought it back into focus. "Old house," I told her. "Probably just the foundation settling." She descended the rest of the way slowly. Her eyes found the chains immediately. Were those here when we toured? I couldn't remember. The realtor had opened the basement door, let us glance down into darkness, then quickly redirected our attention to the renovated kitchen. I'd assumed the basement was empty storage. "They're just old hardware," I said. "Previous owner probably had a workshop down here." Sophia crossed her arms. She had this way of looking at me when she knew I was lying to myself. "Chains bolted to stone walls aren't workshop equipment. I'll remove them this weekend." But I didn't. I told myself I was too busy unpacking, setting up my office, organizing bookshelves. The truth was different. The truth was I didn't want to touch them again. That night, I woke at 2:17 in the morning to a sound I couldn't identify. A low creaking, rhythmic and slow. It came from beneath our bedroom. From the basement. Sophia slept beside me, her breathing deep and even. I lay there listening. The sound continued for maybe 3 minutes, then stopped. Silence rushed back in, somehow louder than the noise had been. I didn't go downstairs to check. I'm not proud of that. I just lay there staring at ceiling shadows until dawn light finally crept through our curtains. The next morning, I went down before breakfast. The chains hung exactly as I'd left them. Motionless, innocent. But when I touched them again, and I don't know why I did, some compulsion I couldn't name, they were warm. Not just warm. Warmer than before. Almost hot. I pulled my hand back fast. The metal hadn't burned me, but it had come close. I could see my reflection distorted in the rusted links. My face looked wrong in that warped metal. Stretched. Older. "Morning," a voice said behind me. I spun around. An old man stood at the bottom of the basement stairs. 70s, maybe 80s. Gray beard. Weathered skin. He wore a brown jacket and held a toolbox. "Jesus Christ," I breathed. "Who are you?" "Victor," he said calmly. "I live 4 houses down. Saw your moving truck last week. Thought I'd introduce myself." He nodded toward the chains. "See, you found those." My heart was still hammering. The door was locked. Was it? Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Old houses. Locks don't always hold. He set down his toolbox and approached the chains. He didn't touch them, just stood there, studying them like artifacts in a museum. Previous owner was a man named Dmitri. Lived here 40 years. Kept to himself, mostly. Did he put these up? Victor shook his head slowly. No. These are older. Much older. This house was built in 1873. Chains were here first. House was built around them. That didn't make sense. Why would someone? Wrong question, Victor interrupted. Not why. Who? He turned to look at me directly. His eyes were pale gray, almost colorless. You've touched them. I hesitated. Yeah, they warm. The way he asked made my skin prickle. How did you know? Victor picked up his toolbox. Leave them alone, he said. Don't touch them. Don't try to remove them. And whatever you do, don't come down here after midnight. He walked past me toward the stairs. I caught his arm. Wait, what do you mean? What happens after midnight? Victor looked at my hand on his jacket, then at my face. They get visitors, he said quietly. The chains do. People who used to wear them. They come back to check. That's ridiculous. Is it? He pulled his arm free gently. Then explain why they're warm. He climbed the stairs and was gone before I could respond. I stood alone in the basement, the chains hanging silent behind me, and realized I had no explanation at all. I didn't tell Sophia about Victor. I told myself it was because I didn't want to worry her. Really, I think I was embarrassed. Embarrassed that I'd let a stranger into our home. Embarrassed that his words had gotten under my skin. But I started paying attention to time. 2:33 a.m. I woke to that creaking sound again. Rhythmic, patient, like someone slowly walking in circles, metal dragging against stone. I lay there counting the rotations. 7 complete circles, then silence. 3:41 a.m. the next night. Same sound. 7 circles. 4:12 a.m. the night after. 7 circles. Sophia slept through all of it. I started to wonder if the sound was real or if I was losing my mind. Sleep deprivation does things to your brain. Makes you see patterns that aren't there. Hear sounds that don't exist. On the 4th night, I went downstairs. It was 1:55 in the morning when I woke. Too early for the usual sounds, but something had pulled me from sleep. Some instinct. I slipped out of bed, grabbed my phone for light, and descended to the basement. The chains were moving. Not violently. Not dramatically. Just swaying slightly, like someone had brushed past them moments ago. But there was no breeze down there. No open windows. No air circulation at all. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, phone light cutting through darkness, and watched the chains gradually still. The metal caught my light, throwing strange shadows on the stone walls. Shadows that looked almost like figures. Almost like people standing there, watching me back. My phone screen went dark. Automatic timer. In the sudden blackness, I heard breathing that wasn't mine. I ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran up those stairs like something was chasing me, slammed the basement door, and locked it. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the key. Sophia found me in the kitchen at 2 a.m., sitting at the table in the dark. Klaus, what's wrong? Nothing, I lied. Couldn't sleep. Came down for water. She studied my face. You look terrible. Bad dreams. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her expression. But she didn't push. Instead, she made chamomile tea and sat with me until dawn. We didn't talk much. Just sat there together while the house settled around us, making all the normal sounds old houses make. Creaking floorboards. Shifting foundations. Wind and eaves. Normal sounds. Nothing sinister. But when morning finally came and Sophia went upstairs to shower, I unlocked the basement door. I had to know. Had to see them in daylight. Had to prove to myself it was all imagination. The chains hung motionless, cold to the touch, completely normal. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in that empty basement. Relief flooded through me like cool water. I'd psyched myself out. Built a ghost story in my head because old houses and strange architecture had triggered something primitive. Pattern recognition gone wrong. Evolution preparing me for predators that didn't exist. I went upstairs feeling foolish but lighter. Made breakfast. Kissed Sophia goodbye when she left for work. Opened my laptop to finally start writing. That's when I found a message. Someone had typed it on my computer. Just one line, in the middle of a blank document. They remember your warmth. I hadn't left my laptop downstairs. I brought it up days ago. It had been on my desk in the study. Password protected. But there it was. 7 words that made my stomach turn to ice. I deleted the message, closed the laptop, sat there staring at nothing. Victor's words echoed in my memory. They come back to check. I found Victor's house that afternoon. 4th one down, just like he'd said. Small, well-maintained. Garden with late spring vegetables starting to break through soil. I knocked 3 times before he answered. Klaus, he said, not surprised. Come in. His house smelled like old books and tobacco. We sat in a kitchen that looked frozen in the 1960s. Yellow wallpaper. Linoleum floor. Metal-edged table. You went down after midnight, Victor said. It wasn't a question. How do you know? Because you look different. Seen it before. He poured coffee without asking if I wanted any. Dmitri looked like that too, near the end. Eyes too wide. Skin too pale. Like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. What happened to him? Victor set down the coffee pot carefully. He left. Middle of the night. 3 years ago. Packed one bag and drove away. Left everything else. Furniture. Clothes. Photos. Just gone. Did he say why? Didn't have to. I knew. Victor sipped his coffee. Same reason the owner before him left. And the owner before that. House has history. Long history. People don't last there. I felt cold despite the warm kitchen. What are those chains for? Victor stood and walked to a drawer. He pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping, protected in plastic. The date said September 18, 1942. The headline read, "Local man arrested for war crimes." The article was in German. I read it slowly. A man named Heinrich had lived in my house. During the war, he'd done things. Terrible things. The article didn't specify exactly what, just said crimes against humanity and basement operations and multiple victims. They hanged him, Victor said quietly. 1946. After the trials. But before that, they found evidence. Chains in his basement. Blood in the stone. 4 people confirmed dead. Others suspected but never found. My hands started shaking. The newspaper rustled. Why didn't the realtor tell me? Required to disclose deaths in the last 3 years. Not events from 80 years ago. Victor took the clipping back. Besides, most people don't believe in that sort of thing. Ghosts. Hauntings. Residual energy. Whatever you want to call it. Do you believe? Victor looked at me with those colorless eyes. Doesn't matter what I believe. Matters what's true. And the truth is, 4 people died in that basement. Died slow. Died scared. Died in chains. He paused. And some part of them never left. I should have told Sophia everything right then. Should have packed our things and moved out. Should have done a lot of things differently. Instead, I went home and tried to pretend Victor was crazy. Tried to convince myself that old newspaper clippings and local legends didn't mean anything. That warm chains were just coincidence. That mysterious messages and phantom sounds were just stress and lack of sleep. I lasted 2 more days. On the 3rd night, Sophia shook me awake at 3:15 a.m. Klaus, she whispered. Someone's in the house. I sat up fast, heart slamming. What? Downstairs. I heard footsteps. And that sound. That creaking. So she had heard it. It wasn't just me. The relief I felt was immediately swallowed by fear. If Sophia heard it too, that meant it was real. I grabbed the baseball bat from our closet. We crept downstairs together. Every step creaked. Every shadow seemed to move. The house felt different at night. Older. Malevolent. The basement door stood open. I'd locked it. I knew I'd locked it. I checked it every night before bed. But there it was, hanging open, darkness spilling out into the hallway like liquid. Stay here, I told Sophia. Don't. But I was already descending. The bat felt useless in my hands. What good was wood and metal against something that left messages on locked computers? Against something that made chains warm? The basement was empty. Of course it was. But the chains weren't hanging straight. They twisted around their brackets like someone had been pulling on them, testing them. And underneath each set, the stone floor was wet. Not damp. Wet. Like someone had been crying there. Or bleeding. I touched the moisture. My fingers came away red. Not rust. Blood. Fresh blood. I ran back upstairs. Sophia stood in the hallway, her face white. What did you find? I couldn't speak. I just showed her my fingers, the red staining my skin. She grabbed my hand, pulled me toward the front door. We're leaving. No, tonight. But the door wouldn't open. The deadbolt turned, the handle turned. Everything worked mechanically. But the door stayed shut, like something invisible pressed against it from outside. Or like something inside didn't want us to leave. Sophia started crying. Not scared tears. Angry ones. What did you do? What did you bring into our house? Nothing. I didn't. Then I saw them. In the reflection of the hallway mirror. 4 figures standing at the top of the basement stairs. Translucent. Flickering. Like heat waves made visible. They wore chains around their wrists and necks. Their faces were hollow. Their eyes were gone. And they were looking at us. The figures vanished when I turned around. Just gone like they'd never existed. But I could feel them. Still there. Still watching. The air itself felt different. Thicker. Harder to breathe. Sophia saw my expression. What? What is it? I couldn't tell her. Couldn't describe what I'd seen. My mind was rejecting it, even as my eyes tried to hold the memory. Instead, I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back door. It opened. Whatever held the front door didn't control the rear exit. We ran to the car in our pajamas and bare feet. Drove to a hotel downtown. Checked in at 4 a.m., the night clerk giving us concerned looks we ignored. In the hotel room, Sophia sat on the bed while I paced. My fingers still had traces of blood under the nails. I kept washing them in the bathroom sink, but the stains wouldn't fully disappear. Talk to me, Sophia said. Tell me what's happening. So I did. I told her everything. Victor. The newspaper article. Heinrich and his war crimes. The chains that stayed warm. The message on my computer. All of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, We're not going back. Our things. I don't care. We'll hire movers. We'll abandon it all. I don't care. Her voice was steady now. Decided. That house wants something from us. I felt it tonight. When those doors wouldn't open. It was like being in a cage. She was right. I knew she was right. But something in me resisted. Maybe pride. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe something darker, a compulsion I didn't understand. One more time, I heard myself say, I need to go back once more. Daylight. With help. I need to understand. Sophia looked at me like I was a stranger. Understand what? Why they're still there. What they want. They're dead, Klaus. Dead people don't want anything. But I couldn't let it go. There was something pulling at me. Something that had started the moment I first touched those chains. A connection I couldn't explain or sever. Sophia saw it in my face. You're going to go back no matter what I say. I nodded. She turned away from me. Then go alone. I won't watch you destroy yourself. I called Victor at 8 a.m. He answered on the first ring. You ready to listen now? He asked. I need to go back to the house. I need you there with me. Bad idea. Please. Victor was silent for a long moment. Then, noon. Bring a priest if you know one. And salt. Lots of salt. Salt. Old protection. Might not work. But it can't hurt. I didn't know any priests. I bought salt from a grocery store. 5 boxes of Morton's table salt. The cashier asked if I was pickling something. I said yes. Victor met me outside my house at exactly noon. The sun was high. The day was warm. The house looked innocent in daylight. Just old Victorian architecture. Nothing sinister. You armed? Victor asked. I showed him the baseball bat from the trunk. He laughed darkly. Won't help. But I understand the instinct. He pulled something from his pocket. A small leather pouch. Dirt from consecrated ground. Another old trick. My grandmother was Roma. She believed in these things. We approached the front door together. It opened normally. No resistance. No invisible pressure. Inside, the house was just a house. Dust motes and sunlight. Quiet. Still. But the basement door stood open again. You locked it? Victor asked. Every night. He nodded. They're inviting us down. We descended the stairs together. The basement felt different in daylight. Smaller. More mundane. The chains hung motionless against the stone walls. When I touched them, they were cold. Just metal. Nothing, I said. Relief flooded through me. It was all in my head. Stress. Exhaustion. Nothing. Victor knelt by the wet spots I'd seen the night before. They were dry now. But he scraped at the stone with his fingernail and studied the residue. His expression darkened. Not your head, he said. He held up his finger. Red dust. Dried blood. This is real. This happened. But why? What do they want? Victor stood and walked to the first set of chains. He examined the brackets, the bolts, the metal links. You asked the wrong question before. I told you, not why. Who? Now I'll tell you what. He turned to face me. These chains held 4 people. 3 women. 1 man. Heinrich kept them here for weeks. Month, maybe. Used them. Tortured them. Eventually killed them. But before that, he paused. Before that, he made them feel hope. He'd worn the chains sometimes. Body heat. His body heat. He'd hold them. Like comfort. Like affection. Then he'd hurt them again. My stomach turned. Why are you telling me this? Because you touched the chains. You gave them warmth. Your warmth. And now they think he stopped. They think you're him. Heinrich, come back. They don't understand death. Don't understand time. They only understand the chains. The warmth. The pattern of hope and pain. That's impossible. You saw them last night. You and Sophia both. He was right. I'd seen 4 figures. 4 victims. Waiting at the top of the basement stairs in their chains. What do? My voice came out small. Victor opened his pouch and sprinkled dirt in a circle around both sets of chains. Then he started pouring salt along the basement walls. We give them what they never got. Release. Recognition. Truth. I don't understand. They're trapped here because no one remembers them. No one knows their names. No one mourns them. They're just victims. Nameless. Forgotten. He finished the salt line and looked at me. You're going to change that. Victor had done research. Of course he had. He'd lived 4 houses down for decades, watching owners come and go. Watching the house claim them one by one. He pulled photocopies from his jacket. 4 faces. Identification papers. German citizens who disappeared between 1941 and 1944. Elena Richter, he said, pointing to the first photo. 23. School, teacher. Disappeared March 1942. Margot Klein, 31. Nurse. Disappeared August 1942. Natasha Volkov, 19. Refugee. Disappeared February 1943. Anton Mueller, 28. Journalist. Disappeared November 1943. I stared at the photos. Faces from 80 years ago. Young, alive, smiling in some photos. Serious in others. Just people. Human beings with lives and futures that Heinrich had stolen. How do you know it was them? I asked. Dental records. Bone fragments found after the war. They identified 3 of the 4. Anton's remains were never confirmed, but he fits the timeline. And his sister reported chains. Said they found his wedding ring near the foundation. Victor handed me the papers. Say their names. All of them. Make them real again. Acknowledged. Remembered. It felt absurd, speaking to empty air, but I did it anyway. One by one, I read the names aloud, spoke them to the basement darkness, to the chains, to whatever lingered there. Elena Richter, Margot Klein, Natasha Volkov, Anton Mueller. The air changed immediately, got colder. I could see my breath. Victor's too. We stood there in the middle of summer, watching frost form on the stone walls. "Keep going," Victor said. "Tell them what happened. Give them the truth." So I did. I read from the newspaper articles, from the trial transcripts Victor had brought. I spoke about Heinrich's arrest, his conviction, his execution. I told him he was gone, punished, dead, that justice had been served, however late. The chain started to warm, not like before, not body heat warm. This was different, gentler, like sunlight through glass. The metal glowed faintly, pulsing with each name I spoke. "They're listening," Victor whispered. I kept reading, kept speaking, kept making them real again, giving them what they'd been denied: acknowledgement, memory, truth. The basement grew warmer. The frost melted. And slowly, gradually, the chains stopped glowing. They hung still against the walls. Cold. Just metal. Nothing more. "Is it over?" I asked. Victor tested the salt line. It held unbroken. "Maybe. For now." We climbed the stairs together. Behind us, the basement was just a basement. Empty. Quiet. The chains were just old hardware. Rust and iron. Nothing supernatural. But I knew better. I felt them, heard them, seen their faces in the mirror. And I knew they'd never fully leave. Sophia came home 3 days later. I'd spent that time cleaning. Deep cleaning. Washing every surface. Opening every window. Letting sunlight flood into every corner. Especially the basement. She stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, studying me carefully. "You look different," she said. "Do what?" "Less haunted. More tired." She set down her suitcase. "What happened?" I told her about Victor. The names. The ritual. The salt and dirt and speaking truth to darkness. She listened without interrupting, the way she always did when I needed to talk. And now, she asked when I finished. Now I don't know. They seem quieter. The chains are cold. No sounds at night. No messages. But I can still feel them sometimes. Watching. Waiting. Sophia walked to the basement door. She opened it slowly, looking down into the space we'd fled from in terror just days ago. "Do you think it's safe?" I don't know if that's the right word. But I think we've reached some kind of understanding. I acknowledged them. Gave them names. Maybe that's enough. She turned to look at me. And if it's not, I didn't have an answer. That night, we slept in our own bed for the first time in a week. I woke several times listening. But the house was quiet. Just normal settling sounds. No creaking. No footsteps. No chains dragging against stone. At 3:30 a.m., I went downstairs. I had to check. Had to know. The basement door was closed but unlocked. I opened it. Descended the stairs. The chains hung motionless in the darkness. When I touched them, they were cool. Not cold. Not warm. Just neutral. Metal at room temperature. "Elena," I said quietly. "Margot." "Natasha." "And I remember you. I won't forget." Nothing happened. No temperature change. No glowing metal. No figures in the darkness. But I felt something shift. A presence that had been tense, relaxing. A pressure that had been building, releasing. Like a long-held breath finally exhaled. I went back upstairs and climbed into bed beside Sophia. She was awake. "Did you go down there?" she asked. "Yes. And I think they understand now. We're not him. We're not the enemy. We're just people trying to live in a house with a terrible history." Sophia took my hand in the darkness. "Can we live with that? The history. The knowledge of what happened here. I don't know. But I want to try. Running away won't change what happened. Won't honor what they went through. Maybe staying. Remembering. Maybe that's what they need. Or maybe that's what you need, Sophia said quietly. To believe there's meaning in this. Purpose. She was probably right. But either way, I'd made my choice. We'd made our choice. We would stay. The next few weeks were almost normal. I rode in the basement during the day, my desk positioned in the corner where sunlight from the high windows fell in squares on the concrete floor. The chains hung behind me. I got used to their presence. Even found something comforting in them, witnesses to history. Reminders that stories matter. That truth matters. Sophia remained cautious. She avoided the basement. Kept salt lines along all the doorways. Wore a small iron cross Victor had given her, even though neither of us were religious. Old protections for old fears. Victor visited weekly. He'd check the salt circles around the chains. Sprinkle fresh, consecrated dirt. Speak the names aloud the way I did every morning. Making sure they stayed remembered. Stayed acknowledged. You're doing something good here, he told me one afternoon. Most people who buy this house just ignore the history. Pretend it didn't happen. That's when they get in trouble. Denial feeds the haunting. What do you mean? Unacknowledged trauma festers. Grows stronger. The chains stayed warm because no one spoke the victims' names. No one remembered. They were forgotten twice, once when Heinrich killed them, again when history moved on without them. He touched one chain carefully. Now they're remembered. That changes things. I believed him. Wanted to believe him. But at night, sometimes I still heard sounds. Softer now. Less urgent. But there. A whisper of metal against stone. A sigh in the darkness. The house remembering what it had witnessed. One night, Sophia woke me at 2:45 a.m. Something's different, she whispered. I listened. The house was silent. What do you mean? It's too quiet. Usually I can hear the house breathing. Tonight there's nothing. She was right. The ambient sounds, heating system, settling foundation, wind in eaves were gone. It was like being inside a vacuum. Absolute silence. We went downstairs together. All the doors stood open. Basement, kitchen, study, front entrance. Every single door in the house. Open. And in the basement, the chains were gone. Not broken. Not removed. Just gone. The brackets remained bolted to the walls. But the chains themselves had vanished like they'd never existed. Victor arrived within an hour. I called him panicked, but he seemed almost pleased. It's what I hoped for, he said, examining the empty brackets. They've moved on. Released. Your acknowledgement freed them. But where did the chains go? Does it matter? The metal was never the point. It was just a symbol. The anchor. Now they don't need it anymore. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. You did it. You gave them peace. But something felt wrong. Too easy. Too neat. I couldn't shake the feeling we were missing something crucial. The house changed after the chains disappeared. Became lighter somehow. More livable. Sophia stopped wearing the iron cross. Started spending time in the basement with me. We talked about converting it into proper living space. A second office for her. Maybe a guest room. Normal plans. Normal life. But I kept researching. Reading old records. Learning everything I could about Elena, Margot, Natasha, and Anton. Their lives before Heinrich. Their families. Their dreams. Elena had wanted to teach at university. Margot was engaged to be married. Natasha was studying music. Anton was writing a novel about the war. I wrote their stories. Real stories. Based on the fragments I could find. Published them online. Shared their names. Made sure people knew they'd existed. That they'd mattered. Messages started coming. Distant relatives. Historians. People who'd been researching the same events. Slowly, a community formed around preserving the victims' memories. Victor connected me with others who'd lived through similar histories in other houses. Other places where horror had happened and been forgotten. The work gave me purpose. Made the house feel less like a prison and more like a memorial. A place of remembrance. 3 months after the chains disappeared, I went down to the basement at midnight. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. Because it had become ritual. I'd speak the names. Remember. Honor. Elena Richter. Margot Klein. Natasha Volkov. Anton Mueller. The basement remained quiet, but I felt something. Presence. Not threatening. Just there. Listening. Thank you, I said to the empty room. For letting us stay. For trusting us with your story. A voice answered. Barely audible. Female. Gentle. Remember us. I spun around. The basement was empty, but I'd heard it clearly. 2 words. A request. A plea. I will. I promise the darkness. We all will. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Sophia descended carrying 2 candles. She'd heard the voice too. I could see it in her face. They're still here, she said quietly. Yeah. Are you afraid? I considered. Was I? The fear I'd felt those first weeks, the terror, the panic, the desperate need to run, it was gone, replaced by something different. Responsibility, understanding, shared purpose. No, I told her. Not anymore. We lit the candles and set them where the chains used to hang. Sophia had brought photos she'd found online. Elena, Margot, Natasha, Anton. Their faces. Their lives. We placed them carefully on the ledge. A small shrine. A small act of remembrance. The air warmed slightly. Not uncomfortable. Just noticeable. Like someone standing close. Like gratitude made manifest. We climbed the stairs together. Behind us, the candlelight flickered. Shadows moved on the walls. But I didn't look back. Didn't need to. They would always be there. Part of the house. Part of its history. And we would remember them. Winter came to northern Germany with teeth. Snow piled against windows. Frost made the old house creak and groan. The heating system struggled to keep up. I still went down to the basement daily. My office space had become something more, an archive, a memorial. Walls covered with research, photos, documents, letters from families of the victims, news articles about similar cases, recognition spreading. Victor visited on a Tuesday afternoon in early December. He brought a woman with him, elderly, fragile. She walked with a cane and wore a heavy coat. Klaus, Sophia, Victor said, "This is Ingrid Mueller, Anton's niece." My heart stopped. I've been searching for Anton's family for months. Every lead went cold. No one had come forward. And now here she stood in my hallway, snow melting off her boots. "You've been writing about my uncle," Ingrid said. Her voice was steady despite her age, making sure people know what happened to him. "Yes, I'm sorry it took so long for anyone to. Don't apologize. I've spent 70 years wondering what happened. Whether he suffered. Whether anyone would ever know." She looked toward the basement door. "May I see where they found him?" Sophia and I exchanged glances. Then I nodded. We descended together, supporting Ingrid as she navigated the stairs. She stood in the basement for a long time, just looking, taking it in, processing. "He used to write me letters," she said finally. "When I was little. He was so talented. So kind. He was trying to document what was happening. The truth. That's why Heinrich took him." She touched the wall where the chains used to hang. "He died trying to tell the truth. His truth is being told now," I said. "Your uncle's story. Everyone's story. They're not forgotten anymore." Ingrid turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. You've given us closure. Peace." She paused. "Has it given you peace?" The question struck me. Had it? I thought about the journey, the fear, the research, the commitment to remembrance, the transformation of horror into memorial. "Yes," I said. "I think it has." Something shifted in the basement then, a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. The air itself felt different, lighter, more complete. Victor noticed too. "They heard you," he whispered. "They understand now. It's really over." We helped Ingrid back upstairs. She stayed for tea, shared stories about Anton, showed us photos we'd never seen, made him real in ways documents never could. When she left, she hugged me at the door. "Keep doing this work," she said. "For others. There are more stories that need telling. More victims who need remembering." I promised I would. That night, Sophia and I lay in bed listening to snowfall outside. The house was quiet, peaceful. The darkness held no threat. Just memory. Just history. Just truth. "Do you think they're gone?" Sophia asked. "Really gone? I think they're at rest. Finally, after 80 years. Because we remembered them. Because we made them matter again." Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm proud of you. Of us. For not running. For facing this." I held her hand in the darkness. Outside, wind moved through bare tree branches. Inside, the house breathed softly, settling into itself, into its history, into peace. Spring returned. Almost a year since I'd first touched those chains. First felt that impossible warmth. First learned the terrible truth of what my house had witnessed. The basement was fully converted now. My office. Sophia's studio. Built-in shelves holding the archive we created. The memorial we maintained. For photos permanently mounted where the chains used to hang. Elena, Margot, Natasha, and we never forgot. Never stopped remembering. Victor died in March. Peaceful. In his sleep. At his funeral, I met others. A network of people living with difficult histories. Houses and places marked by tragedy. All of them doing the same work. Acknowledging, remembering, refusing to let horror be forgotten. His granddaughter gave me his leather pouch. The one with consecrated dirt. "He'd want you to have this," she said. "Keep doing the work." I still go down to the basement at night sometimes. Not from fear or compulsion. Just habit now. Ritual. I speak the names. Look at the photos. Remember. The chains never came back. The house never grew cold again. No more sounds. No more messages. No more figures in mirrors. Just silence. Good silence. The quiet of rest earned and given. But last week, something happened. We got a letter from a family in Munich. They'd read my research, found my blog. Their grandfather had disappeared during the war. Never found. Never identified. They wondered if I could help tell his story. I said yes, because that's what this has become. Not just about my house. Not just about 4 victims of one monster. It's about all of them. All the forgotten. All the unnamed. All the stories that history tried to erase. Sophia supports the work. Sometimes helps research. We've turned tragedy into purpose. Horror into healing. Not just for the dead. For ourselves too. For everyone carrying the weight of unacknowledged history. The basement has old brackets now. Empty iron fixtures bolted into stone. Reminders of what used to hang there. Of who used to be chained there. Of suffering that demanded recognition. They're cold now. Just metal. Just history. But on certain nights, when I'm down there working late, I feel them. Still present. Still watching. Not threatening. Just there. Making sure I remember. Making sure I keep telling the truth. And I whisper to the empty basement, I remember. I'll always remember. You mattered. You all mattered. The air shifts slightly. Warms for just a moment. Like a hand on my shoulder. Like gratitude. Like peace. Then it's gone. And I'm alone in the basement. In my house. In a place marked by horror, but defined by remembrance. By the choice to face darkness rather than flee it. By the commitment to give voice to the silenced. The chains are gone, but the story remains. And I'll keep telling it until someone after me takes up the work. Until every victim has a name. Until every truth is acknowledged. Until no one is forgotten. Not ever again.